Snow White is finally coming out this weekend. I believe this weekend's coming out. And if you're planning to see it, you'll be one of the very few, I think. Disney is scaling down their plans for the premiere. And right now they're in damage mitigation phase. They've been in that for a while. They're expecting that this thing will flop, which it probably will. Then again, you can never underestimate the American moviegoer's appetite for soulless corporate slop.
Now, one thing that is already universally known at this point by the general public is the fact that Disney is in full-on damage control mode when it comes to their upcoming movie, Snow White 2025.
I came back. The losses were around $4 billion a year.
Well, I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting maybe in the history of the film industry. Has there been a film with worse casting than this? And I don't just mean the Snow White actress. Obviously, she's terrible, but both of them.
Disney has scrapped plans for a star-studded UK premiere of its live-action Snow White remake.
And ruin it like every other franchise they've touched. Now, for Disney, as you probably remember, all of this publicity, the Zegler interviews, the Daily Mail leak, caused a lot of unexpected, for them anyway, pre-production problems. People weren't supposed to see and understand just how unwatchable the new Snow White was going to be. It was supposed to be, kind of a surprise, but now there was no hiding it. They came under fire from pretty much everyone.
Now, one thing about Rachel Zegler is that we know that she's not helping at all one bit.
Last summer, Disney suffered a rare mishap on their way to defiling yet another beloved work of fiction with the usual DEI casting and woke plotting.
Disney is having its own problems. They're finally releasing the latest adaptation of Snow White, but they're scaling back the Hollywood premiere of the film. Kinsey, why is that?
Because Rachel Zegler is a PR nightmare.
Neither of them make any sense for their roles. We've already covered how Rachel Zegler is a terrible choice for Snow White. Nothing about her says Snow White, and that's even leaving aside the fact that she openly detests the story, as she's said many times during this disastrous PR campaign. But Gal Gadot, who plays the Queen, the first problem is that she's the evil queen. The evil queen is supposed to be envious of Snow White's beauty, and that is just not believable. It is just not, even in a movie with magical mirrors and dwarves and all that, in a fairy tale, that strains my ability to suspend disbelief. I can buy that this is a world with magic. It's a world where dwarves are down in the gold mines and singing and whatever. I cannot buy that Gal Gadot is angry that she's not as beautiful as Rachel Zegler. I cannot buy that.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business. You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the job.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her. Yeah. Weird.
Hello, Disney. You're going to have to redo.
Back to Tea Time with Tina, okay. Folks, let's put the Blake Lively drama on hold for a minute, and let's talk about how Rachel Zegler loses it after she found out the biggest night of her blossoming career is officially off the table, and let's just say her reaction was anything but happily ever after the highly anticipated Snow White 2025 premiere was supposed to be her shining moment, complete with red carpet's photo, ops and a chance to dazzle the world. Instead, rumor has it that Disney quietly pulled the plug, sending Rachel into a fuming tailspin behind closed doors.
What's interesting about Snow White is that after the UK premiere was cancelled, that was by far the biggest signal that Disney is in pure panic mode at this point when it comes to the critics, when it comes to the bad press, as well as when it comes to those that are very vocal and really speaking their mind and really throwing their opinion out there about this movie.
If you thought her previous interviews were awkward, you haven't seen anything yet. Now the premiere scrapped her meltdown has taken on a life of its own. People are calling it everything from a comedic breakdown to a Shakespearean tragedy that's more entertaining than the film was ever projected to be. But why did Disney decide to skip the glitz and glam? And how did Rachel's own words and attitude help knock this entire production off its rails? Buckle up, because the story gets downright zany. Word on the street is that Rachel was so confident about her starring role, she was already planning her premiere gown, something rumored to cost more than your average house down payment. Then came the phone call. According to insiders, Disney's top brass decided that with all the negative press swirling around Snow White, they'd rather cancel the event altogether than risk having a half-empty red carpet, or worse, a swarm of protesters outside the theater.
Every time she opens her mouth, it's crisis mode when it comes to Disney, having to backtrack. She talks about how this isn't a fairy tale about falling in love with the prince. This is a fairy tale about fighting your own.
The moment Rachel got the news she allegedly lost in a fit so spectacular it left everyone within a 10M radius covering their ears, were talking, crying, breaking down, temper tantrum fits. And the whole shebang, some claim she complained about how this was supposed to be her moment, and how nobody gets her struggle. Others say she threatened to ditch any future Disney project for good. Let's face it, she had a lot riding on this live action remake, from her personal brand to potential for high profile endorsements. Now all that glitz and glamour is evaporating faster than spilled soda on a scorching sidewalk.
Controversy surrounding Snow White hasn't been helped by Rachel Zegler herself. In past interviews, she dismissed the original 1937 animated classic as dated and referred to the prince as a stalker. These comments have sparked outrage among fans who view them as disrespectful to one of Disney's most iconic.
Fans and critics alike are having a field day imagining Rachel storming around her living room, flinging her phone at a wall, and cursing the day she ever said anything controversial in those interviews that turned so many people against her. Whether you find it comedic or tragic, the meltdown has become the talk of Tinseltown. And it's only the first chapter in this ongoing saga now. Before we dive in, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because let's face it, I'm nothing without your support now. Back to the tea. Before the meltdown, Disney was already knee in problems.
For Disney, a company that relies heavily on nostalgia and goodwill, this backlash is more than just noise. It's a direct threat to their reputation and revenue. So how is Disney responding? By playing it safe. Very safe. Cancelling the UK premiere is just one part of their strategy to avoid negative publicity ahead of the film's release later this month.
The original plan for Snow White was to roll out a lavish production, complete with cutting-edge special effects, high-caliber creative teams, and a marketing campaign that would modernize a beloved classic. Sounds great, right? Well, that dream came with a price tag. So high bean counters reported needed a month vacation just to recover from sticker shock.
Live action remake, whatever you want to call it at this point, it already is going to be considered a box office disaster. Even Disney themselves are actually projecting this out to be a box office failure on their part, and they all saw this coming because, look, we already know that the budget for this film is absolutely ridiculous. We're talking about hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars when it comes to Snow White, on top of marketing funds that are actually being poured into this movie.
Every day that film dragged on every reshoot plus every reshoot and every promotional misfired Disney's coffers took another hit now, folks might say, but Disney is loaded right. True, it's no secret they got deeper pockets than most studios. However, pouring so much money into a project that keeps generating negative headlines is like tossing $100 bills into a bonfire. Add Rachel Zegler's repeated missteps, and it's easy to see why the accountants are in panic mode.
She's so woke, they've gone broke, that basically I don't even know if they can afford the big premiere this time. But you've seen Disney really scaling back.
Fan backlash, largely fueled by her spicier than necessary interviews, started to overshadow the production's merits, morphing the film into a risky bet rather than a guaranteed success. By the time someone at Disney realized they should clamp down on Rachel's public appearances, the budget had already ballooned. They were bleeding money with no clear path to recoup the canceled premiere. Though humiliating for Rachel, might actually save them. A chunk of change, after all. No star-studded swear means no extra $1 million expense. But hey, you didn't hear that from me.
What does it say about the state of modern filmmaking? Well, Disney premieres are typically grand spectacles. Think Leicester Square, London, transformed into a glittering stage with flashing cameras, A-list celebrities, and excited fans lining the streets. But not this time. For a film with a staggering £212 million budget, that's one of Disney's most expensive projects this year, there will be no such celebration on British soil. Instead, Disney has opted for a handful of tightly controlled press events with limited media access and restrictions on questions posed to its lead actress, Rachel.
If you're looking for the spark that ignited this dumpster fire, look no further than Rachel's interview circuit. She was supposed to hype up the movie, maybe crack a few jokes about dwarves, or mention how excited she was to bring a classic fairy tale into the modern age. Instead, she went off script, drifting into politically charged comments that seemed to rub almost everyone the wrong way. Clips of her questionable remarks went viral one moment. She claimed the film was about saving society another Times she criticized the original Snow White for being too outdated for modern audiences, die-hard Disney fans looked at each other like, wait a second, did she just insult a timeless classic that we've loved for decades?